No big GMC Suburban, but that, Jake Tapper, is a Fiat, an Italian-made Fiat, a simple car, and the license plate SCV1 stands for Vatican City 1, I am told. Who else would have that license plate but Pope Francis?
Delia Gallagher, our Vatican correspondent. This Pope. I think they picked the right car for him. For this town, that is a very humble car.
Yeah. Well, it's a new-looking one. I'm surprised that
I'm saying it's not nice, but it's in a town where they have these huge tank limousines and SUVs, to have a relatively modest Fiat, although I'm sure there are upgrades to it we don't know about, says something.
By Italian standards, that's a big car, but Pope doesn't.
You're not in Rome anymore, is what I'm saying.
Pope doesn't want too much fanfare, as we've been saying. Now he's chatting with the driver. I don't know if he.
Is this the car he normally travels in, or is this?
No, I've never seen this car before. I think they've done it over here.
For those not super familiar, not extremely knowledgeable about this Pope, tell us about how he practices what he preaches, literally, in terms of the life he leads for himself and how he does not like all these trappings of power.
Well, I think the first clue that everybody had that this was a different Pope was that seemingly radical decision that he took not to live in the papal apartments, right? And he chose to live in what used to be a hotel, and still is to some extent, and it's a very small, regular kind of room, and he has a second room for his study, and other people live there, and come in, and pass by, and visit, and it's on the grounds outside of where the Pope and some other cardinals usually live, in the place that's called the Apostolic Palace. Well, he lives in St. Martha's.
Right, and also some of the things that we've seen him do in terms of when facing crowds, seeking out the sick, seeking out people who are disabled, embracing them, physically embracing them, nothing scheduled, nothing planned, seeing them in the crowd, approaching them.
Well, he does that, and he's done a whole lot at the Vatican for the homeless. I mean, he's put up showers, he has barbers, he goes out and gives money, not he himself, but he has an actual priest whose job it is to go and hand money out, papal almoner. And
I remember, and the day he took, he assumed the papacy. He washed the feet of, was it orphans? Remember?
I don't remember that precisely, but I do know that he went back to pay his bill at the hotel. He wanted to go to the train station. He sent his papal almoner to hand out money to the homeless. I mean, they do that on a regular basis, and we often don't hear about it. So. Yeah, he walks the talk for sure.
Yeah, he washed the feet of juvenile offenders on his first Holy Thursday.
On the Holy Thursday.
That's what I'm being told.
Yeah.
Let me go to Jim Sciutto, who is at Joint Base Andrews, where the Pope just left. Jim, I don't know if you've been able to discern what some of these chants are coming from this very excited crowd, but it must be an electric mood there.
No question, just simple things. Yo-ho, yo-hey, Pope Francis is on the way. That's the kind of thing we've heard both before and after, just leading up to it, kind of a pep rally, as it were, for the supporters here, most of them very young, as he comes to the U.S. for the first time. It's interesting, in what the Pope said on the plane to our Rosa Flores, this idea, I'm not a lefty. It seems to me that there's a message there for U.S. domestic politics. We know that in the political debate here, the presidential race, that a lot of the issues that the Pope is vocal on, abortion, one of them, it's a hot button issue, as we know. The Pope certainly not wanting to get involved at that level of U.S. politics, but it's also about church politics. There are tremendous expectations of him. Lots of frustration among Catholics here about the Church's position on women, on contraception, etc. But in that, I think we can see a message, because though this Pope can change the tone of those positions on homosexuality as well, he has not and may not be able to change the actual church positions on those issues. He's not going to suddenly make divorce okay or abortion okay in the view of the church. There's that tension there. He represents an enormous change in tone, but in those expectations, you'll have to manage expectations because he's not going to change those church positions, certainly during his term. He can make some changes. He can push, for instance, for a more forgiving view of divorce. He's on record saying that he wants divorced Catholics to be able to receive the Eucharist, but he's not suddenly going to say that divorce is okay in the eyes of the church. So I think that comment of his, "I am no lefty," there's tremendous meaning behind it as to what he can change and what he cannot change.
Delia Gallagher, our Vatican correspondent, what's next on the docket? So where is the Pope going right now? What's next on his journey?
Well, fortunately for him, he gets a little time to rest. He goes back to the nunciature here in Washington and has the night off, as it were, because tomorrow...
Translate that, if you would, for people who aren't familiar.
The nunciature is where the nuncio, the Pope's ambassador, lives. So
right.
It's the kind of Vatican's ambassadors.
Which is right across the street from the Vice President's residence here in Washington, D.C.
Right. And so he'll have some rest time because he's had a good few days already in Cuba, and then on tomorrow to the White House.
Well, in fact, right now, if I could, Delia, forgive me for interrupting. This is what we're looking at right now: is people waiting for the Pope at the precise place you were just discussing, the ambassador, for want of a better